This near miss provides a great shorter clip, but in this longer form video I thought I'd take the chance to discuss what actually happened. A little while after starting the day's ride, I found this really nice lake and thought I'd pull over for a photo. There were already a couple of people there, so we got to chatting. They were from Austria and they helped me take a couple of photos with the bike and the lake in the background. In fact, at the time of recording, one of those photos is the profile picture for my Instagram account. But that's beside the point. The fact is, they drove away 20 or 30 seconds before I did. But after that lake, there was a stretch of really nice twisties that I was looking forward to. And because they were going to be slower than I wanted, and I saw the opening, I decided to overtake. In fact, you can't see it very well in the video, but I could see the oncoming car from quite a ways away. I thought I'd be safe to overtake. But the road narrowed to a single lane pretty much immediately after I overtook, so I had to slam on the brakes and try and shoot for that gap between the oncoming car and the edge of the road. I passed the oncoming car going alarmingly quickly. I only had a couple of feet of tarmac to aim for while going about 35 miles an hour. And if I'd missed that gap, I would have gone off the road and into the gravel, which almost certainly would have dumped the bike. And crashing like that would have been awful, especially so close to the beginning of my trip. But enough of that, let's pick up the story where I left off. The night before this, I camped out for the first time on my trip. I brought along a tent and sleeping bag, but my tent was small and I had a lot of things in my saddlebags, so I ended up crammed in pretty tightly. I planned to stay in hostels for most nights during my trip, but I ended up camping out about a quarter of the time. So having my camping gear ended up saving me a lot of stress in figuring out where I wanted to stay. Not to mention a lot of money when I could stay at a €15 campsite instead of a €50 hotel room. Quite aside from the discussion of affordability, I just like camping. And I'd never done it before this, but motorbike camping is a very different experience that I really enjoyed. The only downside is that in Scotland especially, I got absolutely eaten alive by midges. I'll pull up some voice notes about midges a little bit later. Believe it or not, only about 2 hours after the last incident, I had another one. Initially, I just wanted to record the stretch because it was a really lovely couple of bends, and cresting over the hill to the loch was, stunning. The ride was kinda like that for hours on end, and I just never got tired of it. Anyway, there were signs well in advance of this stretch saying that the road was going to narrow. And I'm going to pause it here for a moment to show you just how idiotic the driver of this camper van was. We had clear lines of sight, I could see them clearly, they could see me clearly. And I was in the single lane section well in advance of them, so they should have stopped before that section to let me past. But evidently they weren't paying attention, so I had to go off the edge of the road into the gravel to get around them. And based on what I heard from other people in the UK, this exactly matches the reputation of camper vans. They're infamous for not paying attention, causing problems, and then forcing other people to deal with them. Another hill, another loch, another fantastic view. I was not exaggerating, it was like this all day, for pretty much every day of the NC 500. But the funniest thing happened this afternoon, between the first and the second times I nearly got run off the road. I was trying to figure out what to do for lunch when I saw a food stand by the side of the road. It seemed as good a place to stop as any, so I pulled over, ordered a burger, and who should I see walking up as I was waiting for my food but Gregory? He went a little bit further than I had the day before and decided to stay in this town for a couple of days to explore the area some more. So we chatted a bit more about our respective plans before I got ready to head out, and just as I was getting on my bike to leave, Roshan showed up. Thinking back on it really demonstrates the serendipity inherent in travel. Although we were going along the same route in the same direction, we were going at different paces and staggering our trips differently. If he'd gone shopping a little bit earlier, or if I'd left a little bit later, or if I'd even just not done the washing that morning, we never would have run into each other again. So it was very, very funny that the three of us ended up in the same spot at the same time after having met in John O'Groats in the same way. And this whole experience just cemented to me that the things I will remember most fondly are the people. Because if you go somewhere or see something or eat some food, that experience will be comparable regardless of when you do it. But these chance encounters have a kind of magic that you can't replicate no matter how hard you try. But I've waxed poetic long enough, let's get back to my story about the midges. The previous night, I'd taken this voice note.
I had no idea midges were this annoying. Bloody hell. I set up by some trees. When I stepped out of my tent, they were just swarming all over me. They bit me up a little bit. I have some marks, I have some bumps. They're a pain. Even with the bug spray, I may have to spray the inside of the tent too to keep them away. I sprayed myself inside the tent though, so that will hopefully start to disperse upwards. Just coming across the road, it's infinitely better, so maybe I just need to park across the road, set up camp somewhere where it's a little bit less buggy.
I did not move my tent, so the next morning the midges got even worse. Just listen to this.
I am packing up for the morning. It's 8:30 now, and the midges are so bad. They're just buzzing around. Every inch of skin is covered except my hands and my even when I covered my face, they'd be up in my hair and in my temples.
But the kindness of a stranger really started to turn my morning around.
So I ran into this chap in the laundry room who just making a cup of tea for him and his kids. And he's from just outside Glasgow, and he just gave me a whole thing of smidge, a midge repellent. So that was really kind of him. People are so nice. You just talk to them and they're very open and forthcoming. I don't know why it's so difficult to still be this social when I'm at home, to be honest. It's easy to have the conversation starter of where are you from, where are you going, how have you been finding it. But even without that, like at a concert, very easy, and I still don't talk to too many people there.
Generally speaking, I try to cut my clips down as much as possible. I have a lot of footage and am more interested in publishing this series as a sort of highlights reel. That being said, there are some places that I saved as is. The Applecross Pass was one, as well as more popular locations like the Stelvio Pass, because the experiences are worth watching their entirety. I'm planning to post the longer ones as their own individual videos at some point, but this one is staying in the daily roundup. This particular clip is from the B869 as it passes by Drumbeg. When I was planning my trip, I saw that this was a possible detour I could take, and I decided to add it to the itinerary just in case. And it was well worth the detour. I spent a good couple of hours winding up and down hills and through the woods and along the coast. It was really nice. So to make up for missing out on some of the footage from Skere, I decided to include a longer stretch of this road. It's safe to say that crossing this little valley was one of my favorite parts of the day. There's just something about a steep, twisty downhill that I just can't get enough of. ethical reasons, I'm not going to disclose exactly how quickly I went here, but when I saw the road open up like that with perfectly smooth, flat tarmac, I just had to twist my wrist. pass at Torridon was another place where I wanted to save the clip in its entirety. This was at the end of a very long day that I pulled up to the Torridon Pass at about 7:30 at night. I was looking for a place to crash for the night, and I saw that there was a campsite somewhere along the valley, so I thought I'd ride along and see what I could see. And it turned out to be absolutely stunning, with the golden light of the evening, the lovely sweeping bends of the road. Yes, there was some traffic, but I really enjoyed this section. At this point I saw a clearing that looked like it could be a potential campsite, so I pulled over to take a look. The clearing looked great, it looked really nice, but the only issue is that there were rocks in the way, which made it a little bit difficult to get my bike in. But Callum, I imagine you asking, why does the bike need to be in there with you? That's because I was paranoid. Just end of. It probably would have been perfectly fine to leave it outside the rocks, but I was paranoid someone would come by with a truck and nick it because I've heard of how bad the UK is. And I know in the middle of nowhere in Scotland that is the least likely scenario, but that's where I was at. So I did a bit of looking around to try and find a way to get my bike behind the rocks to set up a campsite out there. I thought it would be adventurous and fun to wild camp. And it probably would have been. The only issue is I couldn't actually get my bike through the gap. You see, the gap was at the top of a little hill. To be honest, I hesitate to even call it a hill. There was a little ditch, and if I could get my bike out the ditch and over, it looked like a straight shot to the clearing. The issue, of course, is that I was still using the OEM tyres, which weren't just the streetest of street tyres, they were full-on racing slicks. The next problem is that I struggled to even get the front wheel up the hill because the grass was very, very slick and my tyres had no traction. So what ended up happening is that I rocked the bike back and forth a whole bunch, nearly got it up a couple of times, scraped the hell out of the paint of the bottom of my bike and dropped it a couple times, until I realized that there was no way in hell I was actually getting it up and over and into that gap. And it only got worse from there, because there was also no way that I could get it out of the ditch I'd put it in. I'd ridden it in straight, and I was planning to ride out straight, but there was no way I could turn it around in that ditch by myself. So after struggling and sweating and being eaten alive by midges for 10 minutes, I realized I was completely stuck. The funniest thing is, I decided to record the whole ordeal on my phone because I thought it would be a fun way to remember the first time I tried something properly adventurous. You know, more than the whole premise of my trip, i.e. leaving home for 12 weeks to solo ride around Europe. So there I was, finally starting to realize the magnitude of my stupidity, when who do I see coming down the road? But the mountain rescue. There were 2 mountain rescue trucks that came along literally 2 minutes after I decided to give up. So I waved them down, they got me out in about 2 minutes flat, and I carried on my way. And then, to add insult to injury, the campsite I was looking for in the Torridon Pass was about 10 minutes down the road. If I had just been a little bit more patient, I could have avoided this whole stress and this whole hassle, but I decided to try and do a fun thing. But at the end of the day, even though it didn't work, it's not like I regret this decision, because I tried a new thing and it didn't work, but that's how new things go sometimes. A huge part of this trip was broadening my horizons and getting new experiences, and this was one of them. And yes, I am going to post that other video I took of this whole situation, and maybe at some point the other video diaries I took during my trip as well. Because although I took those video diaries purely for myself, I'm sure other people may also enjoy them. He says as if he has any sort of audience, which on reflection is kind of odd to me. I'm putting in a lot of time and effort to edit these videos, but I don't have an audience, nor do I have any real desire to be an internet personality. I'm really showing my age here. When I was growing up, internet culture was far less ubiquitous. People made content for its own sake because they enjoyed it, rather than trying to become influencers and seeking virality. A lot of that content was all sorts of inappropriate by modern standards, of course, but there was an authentic joy in the early days that's been lost in the current age of AI slop and hyper-polished rage bait. I suppose that at the end of the day, I'm making these videos because I want to. I want to post my dashcam footage, and adding narration to it makes it more engaging to the few people I know will give it a look. If that makes it more palatable to a wider audience, awesome. But even if it doesn't, I take enough enjoyment from the process that I still think it's worth it. Of course, the evening wouldn't be complete without one last twist of the knife. Just listen to what happened when I was trying to set up camp.
I thought the midges last night were bad. This time they are 10 times worse. Parked up in a new spot, but there's a cloud of the things around me. They're landing all over my things and all in my bag, and every available surface is just being covered in the bastards. I don't have the energy to do much tonight. I think I'm just going to camp out in my tent, kill all the midges I can, and pass out. Honestly, I don't think there's much more for me today.
So I tried to do just that.
I am in the tent. I have no idea how many midges are in here with me, but I at least am inside. This place is not so nice as the last one, but it's free, so I'll take it.
Which was all well and good until this happened an hour later.
I'm going to be quiet for a moment and just pause to let the sound happen. I don't know if it came through, but that sound isn't, in fact, rain, aside from the talk in the background, which obviously isn't. There's the sound of midges hopping against the inside of the fly. There are considerably more than last night. It is awful. I'm going to have a time and a half getting out. I didn't have nearly as much time to sort out my belongings either. When I put my helmet in, it came in with a whole bunch of them. So there are just so many midges by my feet, and I'm hoping that they will stay by my feet because all of my things are in the way, but we shall see.